Hello, wonderful people. At my most recent 100-mile foot race, which was the Mohican 100 here in Ohio, was fortunate to get the finisher's buckle and had several conversations there again about nutrition. This comes up really at every 100-mile race that I do, and so I thought maybe this should be a video topic to cover. Ultra running and nutrition with an emphasis on nutrition for 100-mile foot races. Also, recently I did a nearly 9-hour run up and down a steep dam hill. Literally, it was for Caesars Creek Dam, and roughly a 33% grade for almost 1/10 of a mile straight up. I never needed a code brown, so I actually never left the hill for nearly 9 hours. It was well over 11,000 feet of climbing, and it was a brutal day. One of the interesting things that happened was an entire large football team showed up doing summer training, and so they were all lined up at the bottom of the hill. I'm running up and down the hill slowly, probably look more like a hiking or walking, barefoot. And at one point they're all lined up across the bottom of the hill. It looked almost like a scene from Braveheart, like a battle scene. And they all came running up the hill at once. A few of these kids looked like they were in the movie Braveheart. They were cooking up that hill, looking really strong, and another poor young guy didn't even make it to the top before he was just leaning over his knees, just puking all over the side of the hill, which sort of reminded me that while I'm not a nutrition expert and I'm not a super fast, super competitive runner, I've been a steady ultra runner for over 10 years and have never thrown up after any running throughout my entire lifetime, but in particular over the last almost 11 years of ultra running, have never vomited. So what's sort of interesting about that is the average person is into ultra running for about 3.5 years, according to research that I read maybe 2-3 years ago. So I'm going on nearly 3 times that much. Many years of injury-free, consistent ultra running. I'm at 21 official 100-mile finishes, and at the Mohican 100, one guy came up and was just super appreciative that I'd helped him at the Mohican 100 back in 2018 by giving him some gin-gins, which are just kind of a sweet ginger chew treat that a lot of ultra runners swear by. I love them. I love the taste of them. Kind of addicted to them. But he was just super happy to see me and thank me for that. And I barely remember even having the conversation. It comes up a lot. Talked with another guy at this year's Mohican 100 who at I think it was 50 miles, maybe 60, he was absolutely ready to drop out. His stomach had gone south. I gave him some gin-gins, gave him a little bit of a pep talk, talked a little bit about nutrition, but I could just barely scratch the surface. There was so much more I wanted to say. And then at 80 miles, I was at an aid station. Didn't even realize it was the same guy sitting across from me. He was probably 5 feet away and was just spewing. He was sitting there, leaned over, puking on the ground, and that was where he dropped. But it was the same guy from 60 miles. And I wanted to tell him so much more about nutrition. So that's what this video is about. I know what some of you are probably thinking. I would think the same thing. Having heard somebody had run at least 70 ultramarathons, never vomited, I would think, man, that runner's just not really going for it. If you're not going for it, then maybe you'll never throw up your brunch. But I have been. I've pushed through races over 37 hours and over 24,000 feet of climbing. I've finally hit a sub 24-hour 100-mile, 101-mile race. I do push, but I absolutely hate vomiting. So I'll put some effort into avoiding it for sure. Looking at the bigger picture, I've come to have a simpler understanding of food than most people. For me, it's extra simple. There basically are two types of food: animal sourced and plant sourced foods. It'll be 11 years this December that I have been consuming exclusively 100% only plant-sourced foods. So understanding that from the get-go, I believe and feel that it is extremely important to fuel on all or mostly plant-based foods to have the optimal gut biome, gut health, the maximum amount of antioxidants, and the best mix of anti-inflammatory foods. Now, it goes much deeper than that. By consuming mostly whole or nominally processed plant-sourced foods, ideally as many organics as possible, you are going to create a better mood. And that's really important because everything is energy, right down to the electrons in our body, the atoms. All of it's energy. It's just that we are energy that also happens to have feelings and thoughts. So whatever energy we can put into our body that will give us the most positive mood and positive feelings, positive thoughts. That is what I want more of, and hopefully you will too. So I do think differently about 100-mile ultramarathons than most people. For me, they mostly feel good or even great for most of the run. My goal is over a lifetime to maximize the number of hours of runner's high, for example. So definitely different thinking than most people. I don't tend to want to glamorize the brutal, painful aspects of the hobby or sport. Before getting more specific on eating strategies, I just want to say that it's been going on 11 years since I've suffered from constipation. My tummy is far healthier than it's ever been the rest of my life. Having transferred to an all plant source diet. It's been shown that going on to a whole foods plant-based diet can heal Crohn's disease or halt it from getting worse. It can heal irritable bowel syndrome, many chronic diseases, particularly those that involve the gut, can be greatly helped with this way of eating. So to me, it's only logical that if you don't want to waste your groceries out on the trail, eat more plants. One of the most important things I do, learned from Danny Dreyer at Chi Running, is to consume my final meal before a 100-mile race starts at least 3 hours, roughly 3 hours before the start of the run. And I pretty much do this every single time, and will often set the alarm to do so, and then even take a nap after that before preparing to run 100 miles. So what would that breakfast look like 3 hours before a 100-mile race? For me, it's typically steel-cut oats with, of course, non-dairy milk, really any kind. Typically I would add some maple syrup, possibly some molasses, ground chia, maybe some ground flax, fruits such as blueberries, banana, things that are easy to digest, and oftentimes I'd throw some pecans, almonds, walnuts, just about any kind of nuts into the mix. Additionally, within that oatmeal, there will likely be some amla powder and some beetroot powder, as well as some ashwagandha powder. All organic. Each of those 3 ingredients are simply the raw fruit or vegetable, dried and powdered. And each offers specific advantages for the ultra runner, including increased oxygen uptake and potential relief for adrenal fatigue, anti-stress properties, and incredible anti-oxidative stress power. Before moving on to race day nutrition, let's talk about the days prior to the run. All of that's super important. What I'm having right now is a vegan juice that happens to be high in calories and low in fiber because it is a juice, not a smoothie. In there is an important point I'd like to make about food for the few days leading up to a 100-miler. I prefer to keep it a little bit lower in fiber, lower in total volume. I want my body weight to be on the lower end of its range before the start. I don't want too much bulk in the stomach. And so that means not quite as many fruits and vegetables. What I do eat is going to be simpler, less spices, a little bit less greens, more potatoes, sweet potatoes, tempeh, quinoa, rice, whole grain rice. Simple starch-based meals with a moderate amount of fruits and vegetables going with that. And a daily 12-hour intermittent fast has become a key part of what I'm doing to not only maintain a more ideal average weight, but also to prepare for a 100-mile run. So the day before a 100-mile race, I am hoping to be done, depending on the start of the race, done eating dinner by maybe 4 or 5 o'clock and early to bed. So backing that up just a little bit, to really be ready for, say, a 6 or 7 a.m. 100-mile race start, kind of the meal timing and the prep can start several days earlier. To be ready to have a 3 a.m. or a 2 a.m. oatmeal on race day means that maybe on those days leading up to a 100-mile race, I'm just going to set the alarm earlier and early each day to get my internal body clock ready, as well as my stomach prepared for breakfast that early. Back to the 100-mile race start, you're rested, you're tapered, your gut is relatively light, your food from breakfast is digested. I would typically not take in very many calories for at least an hour. I'm going to be looking for whole fruit at aid stations, any kind, from oranges and bananas to boiled potatoes with salt, maybe some nuts, dried fruit. But basically, while we're running, we're going to be burning probably 500 calories per hour or more, and about the most we can take in and properly process will be about 250 calories per hour. So once I'm settled into the run, I'm going to be shooting to get a max of about 250 calories per hour. And what that's been looking like lately is more nut butters. I want really high calorie, plant-based, high protein, high fat meals. It's important to eat them very slowly And also, I think a key part of this is to not go out too fast. If I go out extra fast for the first 10, 20, 30 miles of a 100-miler, I'm probably going to have a lot more intestinal discomfort and stress. I'm not a nutritionist or a medical doctor. I'm learning by school of hard knocks, trial and error, and by a lot of studying. But I guess it's maybe the lactic acid that builds up and messes with the stomach. Whatever it is, generally for a 100-miler, you're better off going out at a moderate pace and saving the speed for the last 10, 20, 30 miles. Everybody's different and we change as we age, so I talk about this stuff with some humility, hoping that I can get my next race correct. In talking about nutrition, I'd be remiss to not talk about hydration. Typically my hydration would involve some caloric intake as well. Anyways, I almost always would try to mix something in with my water, even if it's just tailwind or whatever from the aid stations. Generally, while running, we're going to want to take in about a mouthful of water or fluids per mile. That strategy works because larger people have a larger mouth and would be taking in more of the accurate amount of fluids for your body size. And if you're in extra hot, humid, or conditions with a lot of elevation change, a larger mouthful of water per mile would be in order. Obviously, you want to be occasionally urinating and checking the color of that to make sure it's not too dark. Of course, if it gets too dark, you're going to probably want to take in more water. And if you're stopping to pee too much, you're not only wasting time, but there are risks associated with overconsumption of water as well. A very important topic I've not hit on and should have before is sugar. Processed sugar versus the natural sugar in fruit or other whole plant-based sources. On the days leading up to a 100-miler, I will try my best to eliminate or minimize processed sugar. And on race day, I'll have some processed sugar more than on the days prior because I know my body's going to burn it up pretty quick. So that is based on what my body's craving. We can go a long, long ways on the body fat that's already in our bodies, that's on our bodies. So even if you happen to have a BMI that is at the mid or lower range of your healthy range, you have low body fat, even if you're at the very lowest end of that range and are super lean, you still have plenty of body fat to run 100 miles on. Theoretically, then you could just take in enough sugar to burn along with that to keep you fueled. I think in my earliest 100-milers, I know I was way over consuming food, fluids, all of it, and it was kind of a security blanket. And just ever so slowly, with more experience, I'm learning that I don't need to take in anywhere near as many calories as I thought. Some runners are very successful just using water and a product like Tailwind. Definitely I'm not there yet. During a 100-mile race, what would be in my drop bag and in my hydration vest? One favorite is pure maple syrup. I absolutely love the flavor, love the taste. Sometimes you just want some sweets. Maple syrup can be fantastic. I've also been enjoying these caffeinated energy bars from Picky. There are lots of companies making great products. Of course, everything I use is 100% plant-based, preferably organic. And a super favorite these days is this little packet is 150 calories. And you can get them in caffeinated or uncaffeinated with different flavors infused into them. These have been a great help lately in terms of getting a lot of calories into my stomach without overfilling my gut with volume. Generally, I'll try to keep some extra electrolytes around. These noon tablets are good, but there are many other types. Just something to add to your flask if what you're getting at the aid stations is water and you want to kick it up a little bit with more electrolytes. Caffeine management has been very important to my high finish ratio at 100 milers. What I've learned is, for me, it's very important to time the consumption just right. So again, in the days leading up to a 100 miler, I'll try to cut way back on my caffeine consumption, sometimes just eliminate it altogether, so that when I do take it during a race, it's more likely to have the desired impact. So maybe the morning of the 100-mile start, I might have a little bit of caffeine to get things moving through my body before the race start. And you don't want to have to stop at a porta-john right after you start a 100-mile race. So you want to kind of empty the gut as much as possible. And as maybe when you hit that first wave of fatigue in the afternoon or early evening, maybe avoid taking the caffeine until you really, really need it at 2 a.m. or 4 a.m. And just always, for me, I always make sure I've got either caffeine tablets, energy bars, or gels or goos, whatever, something that has caffeine in it. Because taking that at just the right time can definitely save your race in terms of just keeping you awake, but also giving you that extra energy boost you might need to make a cutoff time. How could I possibly forget that virtually every hydration vest should probably have some gin-gins, even if not for you, for that poor other ultra runner who's about to drop out and just desperately needs something. So hopefully I'll see you on the trails. Pretty good chance you'll see me in Zero shoes or Zero sandals like these. Please subscribe to my channel and learn way more about all this stuff than you ever wanted to know. Happy trails.